Alright, so I know it's a very exciting time for the community now with the announcement of Season 3 and everything we found out in this chapter, so I don't want to waste any time here, but before I get into the actual discussion, I just want to say here, in case you didn't know already, that the manga's apparently taking a break for about a month or so, according to a tweet made by Murata, and it's almost bittersweet, but more sweet, I guess, right? Like, as much as I would love a chapter every week, we've just been getting so spoiled by One and Murata at this point, so I really hope they enjoy this break the best they can, but knowing them, I'm sure they're probably just gonna grind out what they have planned for the next arc in the manga. And regarding the anime, I couldn't be more excited. It's been like, what, almost 3 years now since Season 2, right? And regardless of how you might feel about Season 2 in comparison to the first season, I'm just so happy to see that it's finally back, but I think I'm gonna have to make a separate video to dive into this more in depth because there's definitely a necessary discussion I think we should all be having about it. So overall, again, it's an exciting time to be part of the community. There's already so much to talk about, so let's just get into the video here. So it's been a while since I laughed this hard at a One Punch Man chapter, and that isn't me saying I don't think the manga isn't funny or that it's lost its touch or anything like that. It's just the manga's taken itself a lot more seriously with the last few chapters, so this was really refreshing to see One bring us back. We're getting this full-blown speech by Garou here, where he's quite literally explaining his whole perspective on justice, and again, this whole scene was incredibly funny once we find out no one even asked him about all of this, and you can notice how he still truly believes in the idea of absolute unbiased evil over partial and biased justice. And this is really interesting because it's something I realized not even Saitama was able to fully change about Garou, and I really like this because it shows just what separates his sense of justice from literally everyone else in this story of superheroes. And of course, like we're about to find out, he's actually been talking about this to a police officer about the dine and dash he did back in chapter 88. He just looks at Garou and says, "You realize this is a dine and dash investigation. Do you regret what you did?" And it turns out he's also here with Bang. He just slaps Garou behind the head after hearing his speech and tells him to answer the officer's questions. And we find out from Bang here as he's walking outside with Garou that they've both been on this journey together for Garou's redemption, it seems like. And it looks like this is all taking place around a week later from the events in the last chapter. And I know this chapter is more chill in comparison to everything else we've been getting, but we end up finding a lot about both Bang and Garou. Like when Bang tells him they both can now start apologizing to the heroes he hunted, Garou just says, "Don't tell me what to do, you're not my dad." And this is kinda ironic considering Bang is his teacher, so I'm sure he's supposed to tell Garou what to do, but now that we're on the topic of Garou's parents, we then get this narration bubble. It says Garou's parents never showed up during his detention. And in a roundabout way, we're then hearing Bang give his opinion on this. He says, "This old head may not be good for much, but being able to bow it for you makes me glad it's still attached. All it takes to become a parent is to have children, but you can't become a teacher without leading the way for them." So it's like he's saying he realizes Garou's parents were never there to discipline him. They weren't even there for him after everything he's done, and we've always known Bang had a special place in his heart for Garou, but it's still satisfying to see Bang admit this to him face to face, how he genuinely and always looked out for him. And as they're walking away, we're then getting this short flashback of how Bang ended up finding Garou after he ran away in the last chapter. So he ends up finding him meditating under this waterfall, and it's implied by Bang that he had purposefully came there as a way to reconnect with Bang. And if you're a webcomic reader, I'm sure you're probably wondering the same thing I am about this whole scene of Garou being under this waterfall, but I think this was meant as just an Easter egg from One. I'd say we're ultimately back on track with the webcomic storyline at this point. But then we're hearing from Garou here. He says, "Just so you know, old man, you better not get the wrong idea. The only reason I came back to you is so I can remember my fists. I found by hunting heroes that I can't find anyone else out there besides you that's good enough to keep sparring with me on a daily basis." So after getting defeated by Saitama and losing his monsterification, Garou had completely lost his ability to use his monster Calamity Godslayer fists. This is going back to chapter 153 when he finally perfected it in his fight against Flash and Platinum S. And as he's reminiscing, he remembers about Tadeo here. He asks Bang if he's doing alright, and then we're cutting over to this scene of Tadeo playing hero with a group of his friends, and after we see him initially getting picked on, we're then seeing him actually start to imitate Garou. He takes the same stance that he saw him in his fight against Bug God and Royal Ripper. He even calls his character Garou Man the hero. And these kids just suck. One of them even tells Tadeo to just explode, but then we're seeing Waganma here, and it looks like like they were able to become good friends after everything that happened. And of course, Waganma being this rich kid, Tadio's friends are just frozen in shock that he knows him, but this whole thing just kind of blows over after Tadio invites them all to hang out together. And getting back to Garou, he asks Bang to arrange some kind of fighting contest between him and the other heroes. Specifically him, Bomb, Flash, Blast, and Saitama. And this is really interesting because Garou shouldn't actually remember fighting Blast, right? Or at least not this version of Garou, because in the original timeline, Garou and Blast fought only after he exposed his radiation to everyone, but because Saitama had defeated him before that could happen in this timeline, then it begs the question as to who took the credit for defeating Garou. But this goes back to the last chapter where Flash had assumed this naked guy who defeated Garou was Blast, but because it's now a week or so after the events of the last chapter, you would think Blast would have came forward and admitted to not taking the credit for defeating Garou. So I think this is all gonna come full circle in the future somehow, where Blast has to figure out who defeated Garou, because we can't forget, Blast was actually on his way back to Earth during the fight between Saitama and Garou, and that's something that's still true in both timelines. So I would imagine Blast would take this situation a lot more seriously to discover who was not only able to defeat Garou, but also responsible to suppress God's influence over him. And this goes back to Genos being the only one who knows the truth. Not even Saitama himself knows he did this. And you could go down the rabbit hole with this, right? I mean, who knows if someone like the organization hacks into Genos' core and steals all of that information. I think we'll eventually end up seeing Saitama play a massive role in the story, where everyone ends up knowing about him in secret. I mean, that's already happening now with characters like Genos, King, and Bang already knowing about Saitama, so this would only continue that part of the story, but just to a higher extreme. But then we're cutting over to Sitch and Sekengar, and we're finding out from Sitch that Bang has officially retired as a hero now. And if you're coming from the webcomic, you already saw this coming, but it turns out he retired hoping to leave Garou as his successor, and Sitch is now thinking to himself that even though it's a risk, he's hoping he can rehabilitate Garou to ultimately strengthen their forces. But he's specifically referring to the prophecy, the one that predicted that in 6 months the Earth would be in trouble. So I'm not sure how to really interpret this, right? Because on one hand, you can say it's just Sitch being paranoid, but you could also look at it as one telling us that Garou wasn't actually the disaster level god threat that was going to endanger the Earth. Because even though he had reached that disaster level, like when we saw Garou use the gamma ray burst attack in both of the timelines, it's not like Garou was determined to destroy the Earth. He was just fighting Saitama and damaging the planet as a consequence of that. So I think because we're in this new timeline, it basically means that the prophecy was never fulfilled like it was in the original. Of course, I can be completely wrong about all of this, so please feel free to comment down below what you all think. This is just my take on it. So then we're seeing the last of Bang and Garou in this chapter. Bang's thinking about how they could continue learning to know each other better when he realizes they can't exactly do it over drinks, so he then asks Garou if there's any girls he likes, and this whole moment they have just really caught me off guard. Even Garou doesn't know how to react here, and Bang is so serious he even says it can be an idol or anyone. And Garou actually has an answer. He says, well, if you twist my arm, the girl who plays Gao Yellow and Gao Ranger, her name's Kiro or something. And before we come to the end of the chapter, we see them just walking off talking about girls, but Murata was actually kind enough to draw who this Kiro girl is. We even get some exposition on her. It says, Kiro, who plays Gao Yellow in Wild Beast Sentai Gao Ranger. She resembles Garou's mom, but unlike his mom, she seems like a kind person. And now I'm just curious if we'll ever see her appear in the manga as a character, right? Because she has a full-on character design here, so who knows? I wouldn't put it past one to think of something like that. And coming to the end of the chapter, we're getting to Saitama and Genos, and it looks like they're combing through the rubble here of Z City, probably trying to scavenge for whatever they could find left of their apartment. And right at the last panel, we're seeing someone or something seemingly spying on them, so I can't really talk about this. It would be spoilers in case you're not caught up to the webcomic, but this is the end of the chapter, guys, and like I keep saying, we're just at an unbelievable time for the series now, right? I can't wait to see the manga back next month. I know the wait will feel like forever, but hopefully we get some information on season 3 during the meantime. But I think this is where I'm gonna end the video with, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and of course, like always, before I wrap it up, I want to give a very special thanks to the channel's patrons: Iron, Justin, Nix EXP, Paranormal Beluga, and Jedi Knight 104. Thank you so much for your support, and for anyone wondering, I just recently opened up a Patreon where if you're interested, you can sign up too and get into the monthly Q&A I'll be doing now here on the channel. I'll be posting the next one up sometime at the start of September, so from now until the end of August, feel free to consider joining. You'd also be helping me out a lot here in a massive way, and you'd get a special shout out like this in every single video. The link will be in the description below, or you could just search it yourself at patreon.com/Izanami. But other than that, guys, again, thank you so much for watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video, I would greatly appreciate it. And of course, if you're interested in more One Punch Man, then make sure you subscribe. I'll be doing more here on the channel like always, and yeah, have a great day.